that was the holy grail of marketing, um, to get people to flood into your network. And so we had, tens of thousands of likes across all the posts we did. We had thousands of followers immediately in that one day come and join us. And then we really focused on our community, and we leaned in on the audience of our community, which was these doctors.
And we are back with another episode of the Business Spotlight here in Central Texas. My name is Tanner O'Brien. I'm a senior partner with our ActionCOACH firm, and I am delighted to be introducing today's guest, Rami Wehbi. Rami is the CEO and the co-founder of Matchday Health, and in the conversation, we get to hear some pretty amazing things about his journey into entrepreneurship, which, believe it or not, he is actually a family doctor by trade, got into the startup world and entrepreneurship. He's actually hosted a podcast in the medical community since 2017. Some pretty amazing things on how to approach marketing, on how to approach team building, on how to approach surrounding yourself with the best people possible when it comes to business ownership, when it comes to entrepreneurship. Just some pretty fun stuff here. So very excited to be jumping into the conversation. And here is the full conversation with Rami Wehbi. So Rami, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm excited to jump into this conversation. Why don't we just start with a little bit of background? If you would share, who are you, and tell us a little bit about the business.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on the show, Tanner. My name is Rami Wehbi. I'm a family doctor by training turned entrepreneur. Have been working in startups for about a year and a half now in various roles, ranging from business development to operations. And now in the midst of launching my first startup, which is actually a rebrand and a piggyback off of a side gig in a way that I've been doing for the last 5 years, which started off as a podcast, then a community, then a matching service, and now a healthcare technology company that helps hospitals staff physicians for various roles. But not only hospitals, actually all employers of doctors. So whether that's industry, clinical, startups, and gigs, we're building the centralized marketplace for physician jobs. And so I've made quite a transition in my career, starting off as a doctor and now as a full-time entrepreneur. So glad to be here and happy to share with your audience any relevant questions.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I think the topic of going from, family doctor to entrepreneur, that in itself probably has a whole story we can jump into. But before we kind of jump into history and background and kind of peel back some of those layers, I always like to kind of set the stage for for the audience in we have different types of businesses that we have an opportunity to chat with here on the show. Some are more traditional small businesses, some are startups, some are different structures, things like that. So for Matchday Health, as you continue to grow and build, if you would just kind of set the stage for the audience at this point. Are you sole founder? Do you have co-founders in the business? Outside investment, is that kind of on the table? What generally speaking, what does that look like for y'all?
Yeah, so I do have a co-founder. I think that if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And I'm a firm believer in that. And so I do have a very awesome, experienced co-founder. His name is Yanni. And he's sort of like the complementary person to me in terms of a technologically sophisticated product person. And so, I bring the community and the doctors and the recruiting background, and Yanni brings the product and the technological background. And so together, I think we make a really good team. And we've also known each other for quite a while now. So it's always good when you start a company, and especially with a co-founder, you really know that person, you trust that person. And so I approached them a few months ago with this idea, and I was like, look, I want to work together. Let's do it. And it just happened to be right timing. He was exiting from his previous company. And so, we came together and we're building this awesome marketplace. As far as funding goes, we are doing an angel round. So we've got strategic partners, strategic investors, as well as physicians that are joining us in this round. And so we're in the early stages of our raise. We're about halfway there. And so hopefully we'll close it up in the next 30 to 45 days.
Very cool. If we would talk just a little bit about the process of going out and taking the approach to raising funds. What types of things are y'all preparing in the business? Like what are kind of the steps you're on currently as you go out and look for investors?
Yeah, well, the first thing is making sure the story is right. Right. You have to, so there's multiple steps in raising money. First, it's, getting your business plan and pitch deck together, getting your financials together, knowing exactly how much money you want to raise, what are you going to use that money for, how far does it carry you, um, you know, all of those things start to kind of come together in that initial pitch process. And so, we've done multiple iterations of our pitch deck, of our story. We've done lots of market research, diving into the problem, diving into, some of our KPIs. And then, ultimately it comes down to, are we the right team to do this? And are we, why are we the right people to make this happen? And it's ultimately getting investors to believe in us. And that's what my job is as the CEO, is kind of putting it out there that, hey, we're the best team for this. This is our vision. This is what we want to bring to life. And we want your investment dollars to build this vision. And, startups are always risky, of course. And so we always let our investors know that startups are risky. But ultimately you're investing in us. And if you believe we are going to be successful or not, and it's my job to convince our investors that that is the case.
I love it. That is fantastic. So when we look at where this business is headed and the changes or the growth that you've had since kind of starting it as a podcast, growing into community, moving into what it is today and what it will continue to become. When you look at, I always like to just ask the question of like, who does the business serve? And the way that I like to frame it up, at least for the audience, is if I'm sitting in the audience and I'm listening to this and I want to know more about Match Day Health, how do I know that I might be a good fit, or I might know somebody who's a good fit to have a conversation, learn a little bit more about the business, and potentially do business with y'all down the road?
Yeah. So ultimately the business is for physicians and for employers. So, the big thing, this is also sort of stemming from my own personal story and problem. And so, here I am, finished, out of residency and looking for my first job. And I'm scouring these, recruiter emails and looking for my next opportunity, and nothing really just fit what I was looking for. And I couldn't believe that, after doing all of this training, doing all of this work, all of this money, here I am at the end of this process, scratching my head and wondering, well, why don't I just have the perfect job waiting for me? Right. And it just didn't make any sense. And, I'd apply to these jobs on job boards and I was like, this sucks. Having to upload your resume, having to, exchange emails back and forth, with most jobs really not going anywhere. And there's no trust in the process. You get tons of these recruiter emails and job opportunities, and you just kind of like, okay, well, great. Well, how do I know this is good for me? And you
Mm.
don't. And so that's why what ended up happening is I relied on my network and my colleagues to point me in the right direction, to make introductions. And what I ended up finding out was that that's really the majority of how doctors find jobs. It's through their network, through the referrals, because when you think about the commitment of time and effort, and it's a huge decision for doctors. And so there needs to be a lot of trust involved.
Mm.
And so, that was one of the aha moments that I realized we need a better way, and we need a lot of trust in this process. And the other thing was that, I started working in startups about a year and a half ago. And a lot of my doctor friends would come to me and say, hey, Rami, how do I get involved in consulting, advisory, working in a startup in an operations role, something non-clinical? And I was just like, for me, it was an easy answer. It was just network a lot, get in these communities, talk to a lot of people. Eventually you'll find your way in. And so knowing this, I started what I thought would be a community that connects doctors and health tech entrepreneurs, founders. And so I thought that's the easiest way for me to bring, the doctors what they want, and then founders also what they want, because they want to talk to doctors. They want to get into that community and understand their problems. And so very quickly, this community grew to a few hundred physicians and almost 100 founders. And conversations happen in the community. We've got a database, we connect people. We've made, dozens of matches now. And it just sort of, along the way, I realized there's something here, and potentially this can extend further than just the non-clinical jobs. Because I found that when we would, let's say, share 10 primary care doctors with a startup that was looking to do some market research, they loved that we could just do a handoff rather than them having to go post on a job board and search and even maybe hire a recruiter, right? So this process just became very effective, and it, that's really what led us into building Match Day into what it is now, which is essentially a reverse marketplace that has employers apply directly to doctors.
That is so cool. And I mean, I think you hit on some really important stuff that, transcends just beyond, y'all's industry, but uh, the effectiveness of going out and just posting for jobs, especially highly technical, highly trained types of positions, and networking is big, right? I mean, I think of the number of communities that I've had to be a part of, and how even my career has grown, and it's been through networking, it's been through who do you know, that sort of thing. The big communities is a big piece, so that is really cool. Is there anybody else in the marketplace that does anything kind of quasi similar to what you all are doing at this point?
Yeah, I think in the nursing space, this has been done and proven. Companies like Incredible Health, Vivian, Trusted. I think there's a few more. They focused on the nursing staffing shortage, and they've created this reverse marketplace in a sense. It hasn't been done for doctors yet, though, and it's as we get through, as we've been doing our research and building this out, it's apparent that there's a lot of trust involved when you want to get buy-in from doctors. And so, a big part of my mission is to really build that trust within our physician community, and build the community and build it in a way that brings a lot of upfront value to the doctors. Because at the end of the day, we're facing some really big challenges in the healthcare staffing space. We're approaching a shortage of 100,000 doctors in the next 10 years. We're not pumping out any more doctors, more than, the residency slots are limited. So there's a fixed number of candidates, physician candidates, and that's not going to change dramatically to meet the needs of where we're going, especially with an aging population and a lot of retiring physicians coming up too. So, in my opinion, the best thing we can possibly do for physicians and for healthcare in terms of staffing is making sure that every single doctor has the absolute perfect job for them. And so when we think of the perfect job, what does that mean? It means, the physician enjoys their job, they're not burning out, and they're going to stay there for a very long time. And right now, what happens is 30% of first-year doctors in their first year out of training leave their job within the first year. And for established doctors, that number is somewhere around 10% leave within the first year. And so what we believe is happening is that we just have really poor job doctor fit. And that's because of the way that doctors are recruited and placed into these roles. And so when you think about, like, doctors obviously are way too busy to use these apply boards. So what ends up happening is employers resort to just exclusively outsourcing their placements to recruiters. And the way recruiters are incentivized is like, anybody that takes the bait is going to go into that job. And it's sort of like jamming like a puzzle piece that doesn't fit into like a spot just because, like there's high incentive based on commission. And so in this model, it relieves some of that. And, we want to ultimately use AI, machine learning, and lots of data to figure out what makes the perfect opportunity for that perfect doctor. And that's really the big vision for us.
Oh man, that is so cool. I find it like fascinating because not having gone to medical school and kind of going through that process and just kind of getting a better peek into what that looks like and how it's maybe not as how structured maybe isn't the right word, but it doesn't always create the best fit from the get go, and that's very fascinating to me.
Mhm.
But I think this is a good kind of general segue into the topic of marketing. I always love talking a little bit about marketing. It's one of those areas that's it's vital to every business, but it's not always the area that everybody picks up on and is really good at when they first start. So I'm curious, what is your philosophy to marketing, especially through the lens of what y'all are doing, getting the word out there to physicians, to founders in the healthcare space? Um, what's kind of y'all's philosophy around marketing?
Yeah. So having built the podcast to something, I started one of the first medical podcasts in 2017, fairly early. And I remember listening to Golgin lectures, which is like just a study tool in my car. I downloaded it off some sketchy website on the internet, plugged in my aux cord, and that's how I was studying. So I'd, drive and just study. And I was like, wow, this is really great. And at the time I just had gotten a new lease. And so you had the dash on your car in the front. And I was like, wow, I think audio and podcasts, like this is going to be the future because people can listen while they're driving, especially if you've got long commutes and traffic. And I was like, wow, this is it. I'm going to focus all my energy, like all my extra time in medical school, which is like very little, to building this. And so what I did was at the time had a influencer page where I talk about medical school. I put out a post. I had some interns join me to help me build this thing. And we started a podcast, and it was the first medical podcast. And what I did was I reached out to all of my physician friends that had a lot of followers, some of them, 100,000 plus followers on Instagram and that sort of thing. And I said, and I, ordered shirts, sent them a handwritten note and said, hey, look, we're launching this podcast called Beyond Medicine. And we want you to help us promote it. And we want you to tell us, what does it mean to go beyond medicine? And we're going to launch this podcast on this day. And so we want all of you to post together, and we want to talk about what it means to go beyond medicine. And so we did that. We sent out all the shirts, the written letters. We set up everything with the podcast. We put together a few episodes, and we had a launch date. And what I learned in that process is that was the holy grail of marketing, um, to get people to flood into your network. And so we had, tens of thousands of likes across all the posts we did. We had thousands of followers immediately in that one day come and join us. And then we really focused on our community, and we leaned in on the audience of our community, which was these doctors. And that was how we grew. We do content for, a physician, some of them, especially with these big followings, produce that content to them, send it out, they'd post it to their networks, and we would capture their audience. And we were providing a lot of value to the doctor we were interviewing, similar to as you're bringing value to me. And we would also bring a lot of value to their audience because they were listening to that doctor, hearing that doctor speak about things in a way that they were never. Remember, this is 2017, before podcasts were a thing, that they had never heard them speak about before. And we'd go into depth. And so this was a new thing. We really capitalized on it at the time. And for me, as now a founder, I definitely leaning in on that approach of bringing value to our community first, and becoming part of their network and becoming part of their extended network of physicians. And that's how we build trust, and that's how we grow our mission.
I love that. There's so much to be said about that, the concept of doing a launch and actually pairing it with direct outreach to people in your network, and coordinating how you all coordinated. Sometimes I think it's often overlooked today, the power of actually sending something physical to them with a note,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And there's a lot of power to that.
I'm a
Um,
firm believer in that. I believe 100 you have to do non-scalable things, especially in the early part of a business, and you have to build relationships. And like, these are the things. One, they will humble and, make sure you are on like the right track as a founder, because when you are connected to the people you are serving, that drives a tremendous amount of inspiration and motivation to you personally. But also, they feel that connection, and they become, sort of loyal ambassadors for you.
Hmm. Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying this conversation, make sure that one, you go and like and subscribe to our channel. Be sure to stay up to date with all of the Business Spotlight series videos that come out here at Action Coach in Central Texas. And of course, if you're interested in featuring your business as a guest here on the Spotlight series, be sure to check out the Spotlight series webpage in the description of this video below and click the apply button, or find a time on the calendar for us to sit down and have a conversation about how to have your conversations, have your business spotlighted here on the Business Spotlight. It's fantastic. Some great marketing tips there. So I'm going to encourage everybody who is watching this, go back, listen to that all again, take some tips out of it so you can start applying it to your own business. But I want to take a step back, and, we talked a little bit about the business, talked about kind of where y'all are headed in the short term, but, I want to go back to that transition from doctor to entrepreneur, and choosing to make that shift. And, I'm curious, what was that transition like for you? Was it a difficult choice to make? Was there some fear that came along, behind it? But what was that transition like to go from, I'm a doctor to now I am truly an entrepreneur, and I'm building these things. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's funny because growing up, I always was starting little businesses. I was always, we had the lemonade stand. I had a snow plowing business that I ran in my neighborhood. I worked a sales job before medical school. I always felt like an entrepreneur internally, like my DNA. And, I grew up in a Middle Eastern household where, we grew up fairly, middle class, probably poor for a little bit of my early childhood. And, watching my parents struggle was a really big motivator for me. And I think that the idea of success for me, especially coming from, the ethnic background that I'm from, doctors were always seen as the most successful people in their communities. And, I think my parents believed that as well. Maybe there's some subconscious transmission there. Even though I don't think my parents really forced me in any direction, I just thought, how am I going to be really successful and take care of my family? And so the thought was, I'm really kind of into science. I'm good at science. Seems to be the only thing I get A's in. Maybe I should go in that direction. And I went to college thinking I would be a dentist or a doctor or something, and just took the science classes. Eventually, I was like, all right, I'm just going to pick something. So I picked, okay, I'll be an orthopedic surgeon, and started applying to medical school, eventually got in. And the whole time through medical school, I sort of felt like, okay, I enjoy the science, but I hate everything else. Like, I enjoyed physiology and learning about that kind of stuff and understanding how the human body works. But the application of it just wasn't that interesting to me. And I was always more interested in solving big problems. My brain was constantly thinking of like, what thing do I build? And even in my first year of medical school, I started this newsletter and blog. I had 7 contributors to it, and we, distributed it through the medical school and through other to pre-meds. So I was always doing something like that. And even the podcast, in a way, was that. So I always had it in my mind that being a doctor is sort of a stepping stone. I always knew I'd be an entrepreneur in some way. And so transitioning from that, from medical school, then to residency and practicing as a family doctor, I sort of just knew this wasn't for me. And that was a very difficult process, especially when you get so much praise for being a doctor, so much respect, so much prestige. to then have to take a step back and humble yourself and, go into it. My first role out of residency was doing business development for a startup. And I had to learn the hierarchy, learn the entire process of a startup. I was humbled in so many ways, but it was such an extraordinary, thrilling experience for me because I loved every minute of it. I loved building towards something. I loved like the vision of what we were working towards. And that was very different from just being a family doctor, reviewing charts, going into a room and, rinse and repeat, which is an important, practice and specialty. It just felt like it wasn't for me. And coming to terms with that took some time. And I think there's still moments where it takes coming to terms with that.
I love that. That's an incredible journey and kind of understanding of how that transformation kind of unfolded over time. When you look back kind of on your journey overall so far, what do you believe are kind of the most, I don't know, memorable things that you've had to learn along the way? Really from a entrepreneurship business side of things, kind of what have been some of the big roadblocks you've had to overcome or just lessons that you've had to learn in your journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest is the identity factor. As a physician, I think it's really hard to break out of that. And to be a successful entrepreneur, I do believe you have to let go of that identity
Mm,
in a way, because there are different qualities that you need to adapt as an entrepreneur. And so maybe as a doctor, you're kind of, you just expect certain things to work for you. Um, Being an entrepreneur, there's no guarantees, and there's no assumptions. You swim or sink, and as a physician, you don't have that worry. You always have a job. There's job security. You're always going to make a lot of money, and so getting to that level of humility that's needed to be an entrepreneur was a big learning experience, and also um, just learning what it took, and having really good mentors that you can gain that experience from. And so I'm all about, and I'm like, I believe in experience first. I don't believe in the theory or the theory mindset where you get an MBA or do that. And for some people it's right, but when I was thinking, okay, do I get an MBA or do I go and build and experiment and actually do it? It was a no-brainer for me that I learned by experience. And um, I also really, really, really believe in surrounding myself with people that are way smarter than me in every aspect. And so
mm,
I never want to be the smartest person in the room. I never want to be the smartest person on my team. My job as the CEO is to um, put the right people in the right positions and drive the vision of where we want to get to. And so that takes a different skill set, in my opinion,
mm.
and a huge level of humility.
Yeah, that humility piece is big. No, I love there's a lot to be learned when you just get in and start doing something versus just going in and learning it all the time. Um, I know just even the last 2 years, the amount of things just in practical application I've had to learn in business is just incredible. Like I can't
Yeah,
get that from a book, right?
yeah.
It's pretty cool. So as you look to, let's say, the next 3 to 5 years, business is growing. Business is kind of where you would expect it to be. What does everything look like 3 to 5 years down the road from now? What are you most excited about? Kind of what do you see for your growth individually?
Yeah. I mean, I've never been, this is the best time to be alive. We have so many opportunities amongst us. I mean, we're the first group of startups working with AI directly, right? We've got so many tools that have never been available before in the existence of the human race, right? Like these machines we're the first to test them, we're the first to use them. For me, that's incredibly exciting. I love learning, and I love getting better at things. And so, I hope that I continue to build my skills as a leader, as a person who can, serve others, serve my community, and just get better every single day. I think, there's a certain, I think entrepreneurs just love the game. And I think I love the game of entrepreneurship. That's the way I look at it. Like this is, sort of a game. It's a team sport. And I want to play the game with people that I enjoy working with and people that are really smart. And, hopefully in 3 to 5 years, we're a lot closer to our vision and we're, serving, thousands of doctors across the country and thousands of employers. And yeah, that's the goal.
Love it. And I'd pick up on the, getting a little bit better each and every day type deal. That's something that's always been near and dear to me, especially if you're playing any game, especially the game of entrepreneurship. That we talk about 1% improvements every day, and that adds up. And as a former athlete in college, it wasn't always competing against everybody else, but sometimes it's just competing against yourself and getting better. So love that.
Yeah.
We've certainly covered a ton of ground in our conversation today. I do want to be respectful of time. So as we kind of start to wrap up here, I've got, really just 4 rapid fire questions. I know we could go deep on probably each one of these, but, just kind of top of head
Happy to do
answers,
so.
kind of thought on it. And,
Yeah.
and then we'll finish up with the last question here. So what is your key to success?
Key to success: move fast, break things, be humble.
Hmm,
You can't always do that in healthcare, but if you can, move fast and learn fast.
beautiful. What's one piece of advice you would give to other business owners or entrepreneurs?
Surround yourself with really smart people, have good mentors. Um, it'll act as a sort of like an enzyme, or like
Hmm,
speeding up the reaction, speeding up your pace to learn. It's a huge accelerant. I'm all about that.
beautiful. What's one book that you're either reading now or have read most recently?
Um, I'm reading 3 different books right now. And every time I pick one of them up, I'm inspired. So one of the books is called Play Bigger, by Al Ramadan. It's about category design, and dominating markets. And that's shaped a lot of how I think about building this current company. The other book that I really like right now is just for inspiration. It's the Zappos book, Delivering Happiness. Really fun book to read. I finished that book almost in one night. And the other book is called The One Thing. And this is
Hmm,
sort of this is a book that I'm really thinking a lot about in terms of, company culture and how we execute on things. You really, there's a question you should always ask yourself as an entrepreneur and leader. And it's, what's the one thing that we can do right now that will bring us 80 to 90% of the results that we want, and focus on that. And don't get distracted with, the minutia of things that are going to bring you a small amount of results. Focus on that really 1 or 2 big things that are going to drive the majority of your results.
hmm. Kind of final rapid fire question. If you had to choose only one area to place some magic in your business to immediately improve it tomorrow, where would you put that magic?
Hiring the best people.
Hmm, I love that.
Hiring the
Uh,
best people. Do not work with mediocre people. Work with A+ people, because A+ people are going to bring in A+ people. If you bring in a C+ person, they're going to bring in a D+ person and an F+ person. Work with the best people. Hire slow, and if you sense that something's not working out, fire fast, and be respectful, about that. And remember, if you're firing someone, you're also giving them a chance at a better opportunity. So think of it in that way as well.
I love that. That is tremendous advice.
Mhm.
So before we wrap up with my final question, I always love to end these conversations on how can the audience go to connect with you, learn more information about you, maybe check out your podcast. Where can we encourage them to take next steps and learn a little bit more?
Yeah. So the best place for me is LinkedIn. Rami Wehbi, Rami. Last name Wehbi, Wehb as in boy, I. And matchday.health. Check us out.
Perfect. I will be putting all this in the video description below. So make sure that once you wrap up listening to this amazing conversation, go check out all that information, connect with Rami, and just have some fun connections here, because that's kind of what this whole business community is about, right? So as we wrap up, we'll end on the question I always love to end on here. That is this: what is most inspiring to you today?
Most inspiring to me today, um, just building with people that I like working with. I think that I'm always inspired by people I work with. And yeah, I'd say that.
Love it. Rami, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a genuine pleasure to learn a little bit more about your journey, about all the things that you've been successful with so far and the things that are upcoming. It's incredible to see, excited to see the growth that I know is coming. So thank you so much for taking the time and sharing a little bit about your story with us here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the show. You're a wonderful interviewer, by the way. Great questions. And thank you so much.
Thank you.